So this is it. My name's James Ski. I'm the founder of Sales Confidence, the world's most valuable B2B sales community. And I'm super grateful that right now we are live streaming across the world to entertain, educate, and inspire those of you early on in your sales career. So if you're new to sales, or you're an SDR, or you're a BDR, let me know you've arrived and tell me where you're coming in from. Right now, I'm looking over Hyde Park. I've managed to get myself a top spot to run this event today. And I'd love to know on the stage, so on the stage chat, where are you from right now? Rich from Refract is in the house. Where is that house, Richard? Tell us where you are. We've got someone coming in from Embed Social, Trip Shift, Deputy. Let's hear where you're dialing in from. Let's get some interactivity in the comments. Otherwise, I get a little bit nervous. We've got Abby from New York, Cassie from Rayleigh, Jody from Bristol, Jenna from Dublin. Hey, Sarah from London. Zach, good to see you. So we're going to keep this moving. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, we're going to have some more co-hosts. So we've got the famous Elaine Tyler, who is the CEO and founder of Venatrix, joining us today, hopefully to make some introductions. We've also got the wonderful Jack Whitehouse, who's coming in from Portsmouth, that I hope to also co-host this as well. For now, you've got myself, and I just want to set the scene a little bit about what is happening. So we've got an incredible lineup of speakers. They get 7 minutes to provide you with actionable insights that after this call, you can immediately take on. After the 7-minute talks, there's a panel discussion, and then from there, there's a networking session. Those of you that want to stand out in front of your peers or compete against your peers, make sure you stay for the networking. If you love to network, type networking in the chat. If you love to network, type networking into the chat, and I'll call you out. This would not be possible without our diamond sponsor, SalesLoft, the world's #1 sales technology. We've then got our platinum partners in the likes of Venatrix, MindTickle, Aircall, the wonderful Varicent, and the new to be announced Demo Desk. So Demo Desk is a great solution for those of you that are providing demos, which is all of you. So get your sales leaders to check out Demo Desk. And then we've got the wonderful Cognizant, Refract, who is an Lego company. We've got Richard from Refract, so he can network with you. There's a few others in there. Air Marketing, SalesWorks, and also Sales Psyche for those of you that want to improve your mental health. So I'm going to kick off in a minute, and I'm looking forward to introducing our first speaker, Kevin Pereiro. Now, to begin with, these speakers only get 7 minutes. They've been recommended by their sales leaders. You don't just turn up and get to speak at sales confidence events. We curate these speakers to make sure they are the best in the business at their level. So I'm really excited to introduce Kevin. Kevin is a partnerships executive, which is an SDR at Brandbassador. He's going to be talking about the importance of having a vision. You cannot achieve anything without a vision. You're going to be hearing how it's important to have a dream, have a vision, break down those goals to work towards that vision, understand your sales targets. Prior to Brandbassador, Kevin had the good fortune for working for what I consider one of the most fantastic brands in the world, Sales Confidence. Thank you, Kevin, for your contribution to Sales Confidence. He also studied politics with economics at the Loughborough University, and he was an athlete as well. Trust me when I tell you, this individual is a bright spark. He's ready to deliver some visionary insights. Kevin, thank you for kicking off today. Here's your 7 minutes. Over to you.
Firstly, thank you, James, for having me. Thanks to Elaine, Venatrix, Sales Confidence for having me here today. I'm buzzing to be here. Look, the topic for today is around the importance of having a vision for your life. As SDRs, the grind is hard, and it's important to have a vision in your mind that drives you towards top performance. So, guys, quick question from here. Who here has clearly written down and defined who they want to become over the next 3 to 5 years? Please put I in the chat. Put I in the chat if you have clearly defined and written down who you want to become in the next 3 to 5 years. Okay, I've got one, I've got two, I've got three. Bryan, Alex, okay, nice one. Okay, there's a few of us here who have, and there's a few of us who haven't. So the topic for today, I'm going to break it down into 3 parts. Number 1, the importance of having a vision. Number 2, setting goals that align you towards your vision. And number 3, building an accountability system that helps you get there. So I'm going to start off with a quick story. I haven't got long. There was this girl called Wilma Rudolph, and she was born and she had a dream. Her dream was that she wanted to become an Olympian. However, she was born with a few disadvantages. Number 1, she was born prematurely in a shack in Tennessee. She weighed around 2 kgs. Number 2, after a couple of years of living, she was born and then she had poliovirus. And poliovirus, for those of you who don't know, it's a disease that weakens your muscles, so it makes it very difficult to walk. So she had to wear a brace. So remember, she wanted to become an Olympian. Number 3, she had scarlet fever. And scarlet fever is a blotchy rash that goes all over your body. Very difficult to function with scarlet fever. And here, this 8-year-old girl has these uncomfortable disadvantages, and she has a dream to become an Olympian. And she'd go to her mom, she'd go to her dad, tell them, guys, I want to be an Olympian, I want to be an Olympian. And they'll tell her, no, darling, work on this, work on that. And her dad would really try and comfort her, right? But her mom would tell her, darling, with persistence, you can follow your dreams. From then on, Wilma, 9 years old, with that goal in mind, she said, I'm going to take off my brace. I'm going to start learning how to walk properly. She started learning how to walk. She started learning how to jog. It took her 4 years to just learn how to get a bit of rhythm in her running. After 4 years, 13 years old, she goes to her mommy and daddy, excited. She goes, guys, I am going to go for my first race. Her dad says, darling, you've only just learned how to properly run. And her mom says, no, don't listen to daddy. Darling, if you have persistence and you have a vision, then you can follow your dreams. So Wilma then, from then on, she went to have her first race and she lost. She lost her first race. Wilma, she had polio. She had scarlet fever. She was born prematurely. She lost her first race. But that wasn't stopping her then. She said, I'm going to continue from here on, every single day, I'm going to go out there on the track and I'm going to practice. I'm going to practice how to sprint. I'm going to learn the mechanics around sprinting every single day. That's what Wilma committed herself to. She said, look, I'm going to surround myself. I'm going to get myself a coach. I'm going to tell my mommy, I'm going to tell my dad, I'm going to surround myself with people that are going to hold me accountable. And every single day, her mom, her dad, her coaches were holding her accountable to her practicing. Whilst all her mates were out there partying, she was there practicing every day on the grass, on the track. 19 years old, 1960 Olympics. Wilma Rudolph achieved the gold medal in the 100-meter Olympics. She achieved the gold medal in the 100-meter race, in the 200-meter race, and in the relay. She had scarlet fever. She had polio. She had all these disadvantages. So why did she achieve her dreams? Number 1, Wilma had a vision. She knew that she wanted to be an Olympian. Number 2, she surrounded herself and set goals that align towards that vision. Every day practicing, whether that's running 60 meters, 100 meters, 200 meters, every single day. Number 3, she surrounded herself with people that were holding her accountable daily, weekly, monthly, yearly to hit her goals. And that's how Wilma achieved her dreams. So the question here now is, what's your vision? As an SDR, why do you have to do 100 dials every day? Why do you have to? Why do you have to send 100 emails every single day? Why do you have to weather all the rejections? That you're working towards, what's driving you forward? That's my cry to you. So the goal here, guys, after this, I want all of us to go out there, spend 1 hour. Give yourself, you owe yourself that 1 hour to decide, who do you want to be? What is my vision? Why do I have to achieve top performance every single month, hitting my target? Why? What am I working towards? And from there, I want you guys to break it down into goals, weekly, monthly, yearly, and surround yourself with people who are working towards these goals and that are going to hold you accountable. And it's the same as well as a role for an SDR, right? You have a target, whether it's 12 SALs a month or whether it's 20 meetings a month. You break it down into weekly activities. What am I going to do? How many emails am I going to send out every week? How many emails am I going to send out every day? How many dials am I going to do? And what's going to weather that? What's going to help me weather that storm? It's my vision, who I want to become, like Wilma did. And that's my 7 minutes.
I love that. Honestly, very inspiring. I think there's so many takeaways there. And I think if you're listening thinking, where do I start? Kevin's given you a great framework to start this. So, Kevin, you can jump off now. I'm going to invite Jack up next. So this is an amazing example of talent. Jack Neicho spoke at our SDR event almost 2 years ago when he joined SalesLoft. And as you know, SalesLoft are the world's #1 sales engagement platform. And Jack was already quite a tenured SDR. So like many of you, he felt the need to go and get promoted quickly, go and get that comp plan. But Jack Neicho took his time and he progressed recently to the AE position. And prior to SalesLoft, he'd already held roles at Adfina and Perfect Channel. And he's a superstar in the London community, always been a keen promoter of everything that we're doing.
Welcome everyone. I love seeing so many SDRs at these events. So good to see so many of you here. And also, obviously, thanks to James Ski for organizing this. I think this might be my 10th Sales Confidence SDR event, which makes me feel really old. And it's great to be given the opportunity to speak again. And I think everyone who has met me knows how much I love building up the SDR community. Going to plug SDRs of London. If you don't already follow that, get on LinkedIn. We've got a WhatsApp group of like 200 members, always sharing. Now, before I wanted to go on to my talk, I wanted to provide everyone with a bit of context and background on me and the advice that I'm going to share. So my name is Jack Neicho. I was an SDR for 3 years, which I know is a very long time. I sold a MarTech platform for 2 years before moving on to SalesLoft as one of the first SDRs in the new EMEA team. Now, before moving to SalesLoft, my goal was to become an AE as quickly as possible. I didn't matter where, as long as I had that title. I was done with the SDR role. And to be completely honest with everyone, I felt a bit embarrassed that my friends had been promoted as SDRs before I had, and I had started before them. Some even got promoted after 6 months. Now, I'm going to talk to you today, everyone, about the 3 pieces of advice that I wish someone had told me when I started out as an SDR. Now, the first of which is make the right choice for your career. Secondly, invest in your own development. And lastly, build your personal brand both internally and externally. Now, firstly, making the right choice for your future career. When I wanted to leave my first SDR role, every role I applied for, bar SalesLoft, was to become an AE. What you should consider when thinking for the future is that your sales career is not a sprint, it's a marathon. Now, my dad had spent 30 plus years in sales and enterprise SaaS, so I had a great mentor to turn to for advice. Now, as an exercise, he got me to jot down where I wanted to be in my career in 3 and then 5 years' time. And I'd recommend all of you do this, jot it down on a piece of paper or on your Mac. Now, I think a huge part of being successful in sales is backing that right horse. Now, that horse, so to say, doesn't necessarily have to be the next billion-dollar unicorn SaaS company. It can be a 20-person startup, but it's the horse that's going to ensure you're going to be where you want to be when you align with those 3 to 5 year goals. And more importantly, you're going to get the right support as an SDR to be set up for that future success, and that you can learn and grow not only as a person, but also as a professional. Now, for me, I believe the 3 key priorities when looking for a new role, and you can jot these down: finding the right leader and team. A company is going to align to your values And lastly, a product that you actually believe in that you're going to sell. Now, it took me 4 years in 3 roles to find all of these. So don't expect to do it straight on your first one. Now, this leads me on to my second point, finding a company that's going to invest in you. Now, when I joined SalesLoft, one of the things I wanted to do was make sure that I was going to be mastering the SDR craft and completely invest in myself and future success. Now, again, there were 3 key components to this. Firstly, I quickly found out who the top 2 SDRs in the US at SalesLoft were, who was the top SDR manager, who were the top 2 account executives, and I scheduled bi-weekly calls for training and enablement with all of them. I needed to understand what made my peers so successful that I could then replicate, and I would highly recommend you go and do the same. Secondly, try to increase the rate of your learning. Block out a minimum of 2 hours every single week for self-enablement. I personally used to block out after 5:30 p.m. for call reviews and extra industry learning. Hopefully your company has invested in a call coaching platform. Lol, if you haven't, hit me up. I know Richard's on here from Refract as well. That allows you to listen back to your calls of yours and your peers. Again, align with this on the point 1. Who are the top reps in your company? What do they say in their discoveries? How do they pitch? If you're an experienced SDR going into that AE role soon, listen to calls further down the sales process. How do those top reps negotiate? If you don't have the ability to listen back to calls, continue coaching and guidance from other reps in your one-to-ones like we explained before. Lastly, find out what you're great at as an SDR and position yourself as a thought leader internally and externally on that. Now, me personally, I was a very early mover on testing video prospecting in Europe 2 years ago, which feels crazy. Now everyone's testing it or using it as an effective channel. And as I became more successful at using video at SalesLoft or Vidyards, I started to share that best practice with SDR communities and our customers. And then I started to post about it on LinkedIn, which was really the kickoff of my brand and helping me succeed externally. And I see the same from other great SDRs on LinkedIn. Aaron from Kean, Harry Monkhouse on cold call training, Holly Allen, LinkedIn tips, Charlie Johnson, Tom Boston, they're all doing it. Now to recap, think about how to stand out from your colleagues and peers. Network internally with the top reps. Upskill yourself to become the master of what you enjoy and what you're good at. Now think about it this way. Ultimately, salespeople are likely to be the ones that will be employing you later on in your career. So it's great to start building that name and presence online. Lastly, this is going to tie into my last topic. Building your brand both externally, which everyone always talks about, it's just as important to do it internally. Now, in my opinion, to accelerate your career progression, it's not only about consistently hitting your number, but by becoming the ultimate team player, by being the person that your colleagues are going to turn to for advice or help, consistently going above and beyond what is expected of you in your role. Now, this comes from making sure that you've chosen that right company to grow your career, ensuring you align with the core values and you believe in what you're going to sell. And crucially, your behavior matches where you want to be in the 3 to 5 year goals that you set out. Now, to share what my 3 to 5 year goals were when I left to join SalesLoft, mine were to become the master SDR, to become a face in the SDR community in London and the UK, and lastly, to upskill myself to the point where it was a no-brainer for my next leader to promote me to become an account executive. Now, I tried my absolute hardest to achieve those first 2, which ultimately led into the third overarching goal, which was to become a successful AE when the time came. And I would like to think that I achieved that, but you can go and ask my boss, Ollie, if he thinks otherwise. So in conclusion, what I've talked about, when thinking about the pressures of getting to that next stage in your career, as a lot of you will be on this call, getting to that AE level, right? Or if you want to move into CS or account management, whatever it's going to be, make sure you figured out where you want to be to do that, what you want to achieve in the next 3 to 5 years, upskill yourself, become a master of your craft, and lastly, build your brand externally and importantly, internally. Thanks so much for listening. Who's up next? If you haven't already followed or joined SDRs of London, plug it again, get on it. It's a place to come and learn and share all together. Hopefully someone learned something from me. I know we were telling some jokes. I feel like I've got a good one about Walker's Crisps. Oh God, you saved me, James. Thank you. Elaine.
Jack, you're good. I'm not sure the jokes though. We need to work on those ones. But thank you for an excellent talk. And it's been amazing to see your journey. And you should be proud of the contribution you've made in London. So, you know, I feel for everyone. There's someone to follow in Jack. I'm really happy that we've got Elaine, the wonderful Elaine background, because she's relentlessly working to support SDRs in the UK find their career. All right, Elaine, how are you getting on there?
Yeah, really good, thank you. We've had a fantastic first quarter at Venatrix, posting a record number of SDRs, having a biggest ever month twice, which I think simply underlines the demand for SaaS companies wanting to make sure that they've got good quality pipeline delivered by you guys, which is super duper exciting.
Amazing. Look, frankly, Sales Confidence wouldn't exist without the support of Elaine and Venatrix, and we wouldn't have come up with this event around the SDR. So thank you to Elaine. I'm going to let Elaine introduce our next speaker and let us get on. So over to you, Elaine.
Fab. So my great pleasure to introduce Venatrix alumni, Sam Kean. So Sam is the SDR team lead at Fresh Relevance, and he's going to be treating us to a speech called How Do Best Practices for Prospecting Change Across Target Industries? So a lot of what we see on LinkedIn might be best practice, but is it in fact industry specific? He's going to be exploring how best practices change from client to client. So in terms of Sam and who he is, so he is responsible for carrying a meeting quota whilst leading and coaching and giving enablement to the SDR team of Fresh Relevance, the largest UK-founded e-commerce personalization platform. He generated the most revenue of any SDR in their first year at Fresh Relevance and pioneered video prospecting at the company, winning VDRs Video in Sales Award in 2020. So Sam is passionate about coaching and helping SDRs become sales stars in the early stages of their career, always striving to improve the team's outreach, including creating the team's cold call playbook, cold call coaching, and building out effective messaging and cadences in partnership with SalesLoft. So Sam.
Thanks very much for the introduction, Elaine. It's glad to see you also have trouble saying Fresh Relevance. I actually find that kind of hard to get across on cold calls sometimes. It tends to come out a little bit jumbled. But today is a topic that I think James has mentioned to me. He gets a lot of requests for, that industry-focused sales confidence events. There's clearly a demand to be speaking about this sort of thing within the community. And it's a topic I have often wondered about a lot, and apparently other SDRs have as well. Best practices in the SaaS industry are often pioneered by other sales professionals who are selling into the sales sector, and they talk and give advice on a ton of gold dust within the industry, and it's helped me out tremendously. There's actually people on this event here today who've given me some advice, which has really helped me in my career. But what I've learned, and from speaking to other SDRs in the lead up to this talk, is that you have to take this advice sometimes with a bit of a pinch of salt to see how it will work out for you and how you can mold it to your own industry, because you might not see the same results as others do have. I'm going to center this talk around a chart that Jeremy Donovan from SalesLoft kindly shared on LinkedIn recently. If you haven't seen it, I'd recommend having a look at it. It's a really cool thing to see. And it shows how more or less likely prospects are to apply than average by their industry. So on this graph, salespeople are 66% more likely to reply than average. I think the reasons for that are quite obvious. You know, as salespeople, we do appreciate good prospecting. We appreciate the craft that goes into it. And we're just more likely to respond to videos, voice notes, being extroverts ourselves. Whereas other prospects don't necessarily have an appreciation for the craft like we do, or they just aren't as forgiving. Some of them may hate being sold to, and they just aren't going to get that kind of response you're looking for. So what this means is best practice might actually change across industries, and I think other SDRs have experienced this themselves. So if we're going to look at Jeremy Donovan's scale, and as we move down the scale into the negative percentage on reply rate, how do things change? Does our best practice alter, or should it remain the same, but reply rates are just going to be lower? My experience is that it does change as you go further down the funnel, and certain channels have to become more important while others don't become as important, or in fact can't be used at all. So on this scale, marketing and e-commerce are at minus 10%. So I just fall into that negative zone. So it's probably a good place to start to talk about how it changes going from the positive to the negative score. And my experience with these personas is that persona-based and crisp messaging tends to be a lot more effective in the long run and actually get you better reply rates over email than attempting to personalize every single email you're sending out to your prospects. If you do choose to be personalized with these personas, you've got to be really picky about what you're choosing to do it on. And it's better to keep it work related than outside of that. I've seen fantastic examples on LinkedIn from SDRs who are sending really personalized emails to their prospects also within the sales sector, or someone with a positive score on that index, talking about their outside of work interests or hobbies they might be interested in. And I've tried to emulate that myself, and I've just not seen the results I'd expected or that others seem to have. Marketers just don't seem to respond quite as well to me doing that. I think I've heard some of them actually refer to it as token personalization before. It's not really relevant to them. I've spoken to a head of digital who actually dislikes salespeople talking about stuff like he also owns a dog, whether you're a fellow fan of snow sports like skiing or snowboarding. He said he's much more likely to respond if you just tell him what you do and how it helps him. Another one of my colleagues actually booked a meeting, and the reason the prospect took it, he gave it when he turned up, and he said it's not because of the attempt at personalization my colleague went to, because he included quite a lot of good stuff in there, but it's because he highlighted a problem he was currently thinking about, which is what made him want to speak. So the lesson we've learned is that as you move into this negative score, these prospects tend to respond better to personalization and clear job benefits if you are going to do it. You can get away with more once they're warm on the phone, but for their initial cold outreach, it's best to just be laser lined with how you focus it. I've also seen a similar pattern happen on cold call openings as well. I know some SDRs have really good success with opening up with something like, have you got 27 seconds to explain why I'm calling today? And really, this is going to be a sales call. Whereas I've received quite negative responses by trying to do that. My prospects seem to hate the fact that it was so obvious they were being sold to. Some of them even sighed and said, "Oh, go on then." But they didn't really want to hear what I had to say. So maybe it's because I couldn't pull it off, but it just didn't quite work for me as it has for others. So the lesson I've learned is you want to be understanding your prospect situation and the relevancy of your solution to their persona. Using the challenges and benefits that our customers personally talk about on our G2 reviews has worked really, really well for us in helping understand what we do for them and how we can best prospect. Please do shoot me a message after this if you want to see some examples of what we see work for us in these industries. But to move further down this funnel and into the kind of realms of finance and data, I've spoken to some fantastic SDRs within the sector in the lead up to this. So I just want to give a big shout out to Charlotte, Alexia, Alex, and Jordan, who've helped me with this talk. And the general theme that they've told me as you move down this funnel is that some channels close up or have to be used differently. So at the minus 40%, for example, on that graph, many prospects in these industries don't live on LinkedIn or post. So key decision makers are that much harder to reach, and finding relevance on people's profiles is really difficult. So you can't send something that personalized or targeted, and doing things like LinkedIn voice notes or messages just becomes a channel you can't use at all. Also, stuff like video prospecting, which Jack touched on, has question marks and nuances in this negative scoring territory. It can work, but you've got to be very detailed and to the point. You can't get away with any warm approaches or any fluff. I think Alex even told me that his prospects won't even open a video prospecting message because they're so security conscious they won't click on the link. So this just leaves calling as the most effective channel, as it is with everywhere else. You just have less options to do. So you've really got to master what you can do on a cold call. So the overall trend is prospecting these zones are more responsive to learning what you do, what your product is. So as an SDR, you want to lean more into knowing your personas really well and becoming an expert in your field to appear more consultative. So for these more corporate businesses, general rule is to focus on your job benefits. The overall trend is probably that the personality type across these industries is the big factor at play here. So financial personas are more likely to be analytical and only care about the value you bring, whereas more extrovert personalities probably respond slightly better to more in-your-face forms of prospecting and a wider form of outreach. There's not a golden ticket across different industries of best practice. You've really got to find your own way of doing this and learn how your prospects like to be communicated to, and understand how they want a message to be received, and that's going to help you form your own best practice. But the best bit of advice to finish on I can give is anyone struggling to find their rhythm, make a list of the top 5 industry challenges that you see, open with them on the phone, frame your emails around them, and you should see a lot more success. Jack, Nico, tough act to follow always, but it's been a pleasure to speak to you guys here today. I've attended many sales confidence events, and it's nice to give back to the community that's given me so much. So pleasure to be here today, guys. James, back to you on this one. There we go. Oh, hello. Hello, Elaine.
Thank you so much for that. Some really insightful and some great points there that I'm sure that everybody can learn from. Good, nice to see you. So next up, we're going to be hearing from Monika Skiba, who is a business development representative at Varicent, with her speech, Opportunities to Speak, Developing Across Different Cultures and Languages. Now, this is a super hot topic for us at Venatrix at the moment, because as our clients are now expanding over Europe, we're seeing a massively increased demand for SDRs with language skills. So she's going to be talking about how in an increasingly digital landscape, language is becoming one of the last remaining barriers between you and your prospects, and how you can use your language skills to elevate your sales career. So at Varicent, Monika helps companies streamline their sales to drive growth from planning to payment. She's originally from Poland, but has lived across several countries, with London being her current home. Besides sales, her greatest passion is languages. She speaks Dutch, English, Italian, Polish, and Spanish fluently. Working in business development within Varicent, she's able to combine these two passions by developing relationships with a variety of companies based across Europe. So welcome to the stage, Monika. Looking forward to hearing your speech.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Elaine, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Monika, and I work as BDR for Varicent. And in my role, I cover a pretty large region, which includes Southern Europe, Benelux, and Central and Eastern Europe. And when I think about our job in general, I always think about flexibility. We always need to adjust to prospects' needs, approach them in a correct way, listen to them very carefully, because every single detail during our conversation might result extremely valuable piece of information, which would lead us to the success, obviously. And to achieve this, we usually use our highly developed soft skills, which is related more to the psychological factor of prospecting. But during working with different countries, we cannot forget about cultural and linguistic factor of prospecting. And Federico Fellini said that a different language is always a different vision of life. And I think that it does have reflection in business as well. So when we think about flexibility in developing and prospecting, I would like to talk tonight about 3 main factors: cultural adaptation, linguistic adaptation, and tools we may use. So my first point will be cultural factor, which includes primarily localization of our messaging and adapting it to a target group. In translation, for example, it appears as well. We can use different strategy of translation. When one, for example, is domestication, which means that we adapting and adjusting the form and the content of our message depending of the target language and target group. It does appear as well in marketing and translation of commercial, which is the process of adapting a message from one language to another, maintaining its intent, style, tone, and context. And successfully adapted message provokes the same emotions and carries the same implications in the target language. So in prospecting, I think we don't necessarily need such a detailed process, but we do want to achieve the same goal, regardless of country or language. We want to schedule a meeting with our prospect. And to achieve that, we would need a different strategies and form. So based on my experience and my observation, for example, when I'm prospecting in the Netherlands and I talk to Dutch people, they usually are big fans of short, straightforward messages. They like statistics, they like numbers, they like clients' testimonies. And when I'm prospecting in Southern Europe, I use slightly more funky, slightly more descriptive tone, using anecdotes, mentioning things we might have in common, because I have observed that like just raw information they might find boring and normally treated as a spam. So it doesn't work there. So the content of the message is the same. I'm presenting my company, I'm presenting our product. The goal is the same. I want a meeting with our prospect, but the form of the message is different, and I think we should be very aware of it. My next point will be linguistic adaptation. And obviously, first idea we are going to think about, it's clearly language. But again, it's not going to be just a language barrier we can overcome by speaking target language group. But the language itself carries a series of details that then contribute to our success and failure. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to develop this topic deeply, but maybe better because I'm a massive passionate linguist. I could talk about this, and it probably would be boring to the majority of us. But I will illustrate it in a simple example. In English language is easy. We are going to use always the form you when we are addressing our prospect, and it works perfectly, no problem. In Polish, that would be treated very disrespectful because we always need to use the form per sir, lady, miss, mister. And when we talk to someone we don't know, especially in business context, and if additionally this person is, for example, older than us, we might be sure, and we'll address our message per you, we might be sure that we're not going to receive any response. So another factor we should be aware. And the third one, I wanted to talk a bit about tools. So nowadays we are lucky to have a big group of tools we can use during our prospecting, which is cold calling, emails, videos, LinkedIn messaging, and might be a slight generalization, but it's just based on my observation. I have observed some patterns, which tools particularly work better depending on the country. And again, I will use my motherland. Polish people, they are not the biggest fan of cold calling, because when you cold call them, they immediately think you want to sell them something quickly, and they treat it more as a telemarketing. So I have observed that it's not the best tool there. Way much better is email or with description of the solution, or maybe a video. When another example, in Belgium, I think I have never received any response for my email, when calling works perfectly and brought me many opportunities. So yeah, we should be aware of tools we are using depending on the country as well. And all that said, now I will be a little bit of devil's advocate, and I will say that it's all just generalization, and my personal approach is to always treat each prospect very individually, in a very individual way, because we never know. But it does exist some patterns and business ethics characteristic to a particular country. So I would say it's not about assuming that something will happen, but it's about being prepared for different scenarios and observing what is working, what is not working. And general conclusion would be that in our position, our job, we always may face plenty of obstacles, but I think the clue here is to change obstacles into our benefits and into fun, because I think that it might be slightly more difficult, for example, to work with more countries and switching between languages, but at the same time is very interesting to me, and it's a great fun. So yeah, I recommend it to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Monika. Hey, everyone. So you don't know me, but I am Jack Whitehouse, and I was supposed to be hosting earlier. So hello. I'm stepping in for James, but up next, we're going to have Jasmine again. So Jasmine, if you want to jump on. So everybody, Jasmine Chalhand, she is a client lead and market expert at FeedStock. She has been a founding SDR at FeedStock, and FeedStock are a, well, do you want to explain what FeedStock are? They're
Yeah, so we're a client relationship assistant. So we just help keep on top of digital relationships in this sort of crazy world that we're living in at the moment. So essentially just understanding your client relationships a lot more, but yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm going to let you jump into it. Sorry for that little startup, everybody. And please enjoy this presentation.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for that, Jack. And hi, everyone. Take two. I was on earlier, but no one could hear me, which was great. So Hi everyone, and thank you so much to Sales Confidence as well for having me. So like Jack said, I'm a founding SDR at FeedStock, which has meant that I've had to start from scratch. Unfortunately, I've not had any best practices that I've been able to replicate. So in just a few months, I've had to take on a lot of learning, a lot of trial and error, and that's exactly why I'm going to be talking about different approaches to learning, and the different approaches is really, really key. So this really matters because without recognizing the factors that affect the way we learn, we're actually unable to take advantage of them and play them to our strengths. And as we all know, in sales, time is money. So it's really key to be effective in your learning to a point where you're successfully absorbing the optimal amount of information in a good, reasonable amount of time. I'm just conscious, can everybody hear me? Can you just let me know in the chat, please? Okay, perfect. So there are 5 main points that I do want to cover. And some of them may seem really obvious or really basic, but I think they are often overlooked because a lot of the time when we do think of learning, let's be honest, we all think about a tedious online course or a really text-dense book. But in reality, there are so many other approaches nowadays. And that brings me on to my first point, which is learning channels. So as mentioned, we are so fortunate nowadays to have so many platforms from which we can learn. So we're thankfully not just confined to books and the World Wide Web. But I don't think we actually exploit these channels enough, especially things like podcasts and YouTube videos, which are actually way easier to access than traditional learning methods. You can just go online, find them instead of having to go to a library or buying a book. It's just a lot easier. So for me, I've actually been finding it really useful to run videos in the background when I'm not talking to clients, of course, and actually listening to them as I work. So for me, this just feels a lot less intense, but has been so effective. But do whatever suits you best, which actually brings me to my next point, which is learning styles. So it's really important to recognize how you learn, and everybody is going to be completely different. And there's actually a statistic that people remember only 20% of what they read, but 80% of what they see. And there is a lot of controversy around these statistics because there are so many variables that come into play. And whilst these are very generalized statistics, different individuals will find different levels of effectiveness with each method. And it can be really easy to get lost and feel like you're doing the wrong thing, especially when your peers might be doing something completely different, and also when there's a larger, more generalized cohort of SDRs. So do be mindful that what your peers may be finding effective may not actually be the best route for you. So be in tune with yourself and how your brain works. So thirdly, time allocation. There's actually a Japanese term called Kaizen. I don't know if you guys have heard of it before. Let me know in the chat if you've heard of Kaizen. But it means small continuous improvements. And I think that it's really, really relevant for learning. So learning is definitely a process, and things are not going to happen overnight as much as we would love them to. So don't overwhelm yourself to the point where, learning becomes a chore. Instead, it's actually way more effective and also manageable to make small incremental changes. For example, reading 30 minutes before you go to bed, or listening to a video in the background, like what I do. And this is something that can be continued on a long-term basis instead of bombarding yourself, getting fed up and getting burned out. So fourth, seizing opportunities. So getting involved in extra things outside your job can also be a really nice, refreshing change from the typical learning that you're exposed to on a daily basis. So on a more personal note, I recently took on an opportunity with Sales Confidence, as James mentioned earlier. I'm not sure if you heard that, but when they needed an extra hand. And along the way, I've been able to learn so much, which has really fueled the start of my career as a founding SDR. And I've also been able to network and meet so many new great people. So for example, for you guys, even coming here today and seizing the opportunity to potentially stay after and network is a really great way to meet not only new people, but also learn from others who are like-minded and essentially our community of people and SDRs. And finally, enjoyment. So very cringe, very cliche, I'm aware, but I do think that recognizing ways in which you enjoy learning is so important. It's really simple, right? If you're not enjoying it, you're not maximizing being effective. But if you're really into it, And if you're enthused and happy whilst learning, you're so much more likely to retain that information. So to summarize, the 5 main points that have really helped me are learning channels, learning styles, time allocation, seizing opportunities, and simply enjoying it. And don't feel pressured to do what everybody else is doing. Just go at your own pace, have your own style, and do what works for you. But that's everything. So James or Jack or Elaine, over to you.
Hello. Thank you for that, Jasmine. So that was fantastic. Up next, we have Bryan. Do you want to just jump on, Bryan? The man himself. Hello.
Hello.
So Bryan is essentially a BDR, business development representative in Google Cloud, based in Dublin. You've been selling since the age of 15, and you've sold anything from charity subscriptions to SaaS solutions right now. So I'm going to let you get underway. So enjoy and give us all that information.
Sure. Thanks, Jack. Yeah, so look, I'll start by giving you guys some context. I graduated last May. I started in Google in my first BDR role last August. And we did a couple of weeks of training. I went through training with a lot of product knowledge, as you'll probably be aware with Google, it's so big. So we had a lot of product knowledge, a lot of sales training, and then I hit the floor. And in my first 6 weeks on the job, I booked 0 meetings. Not a single meeting could I get. That brought me up to October, November. Thankfully, I crawled over the line. Since then, I've hit about 100%, 110, 120% month on month, which ended up culminating in April. We moved from monthly targets to quarterly targets, and I ended up hitting the Q2 target in the first 4 days. Since then, I've moved on to more of a mentorship role in my team. But there's a reason I'm telling you that. The title of my talk is How to Miss Your Target Month After Month. And the reason I know that is because I've done it. I wanted to look at some of the reflections that we'll have on going from not hitting targets to hitting it consistently and overachieving. And I noticed that at a lot of these talks, you learn what to do and what to take on, but not necessarily the bad habits that you might have. So that's why I wanted to talk about that today, the things that I didn't know I was doing wrong that were stopping me from hitting my targets. Firstly, if you want to miss your targets, you have to not play the impression game. And there's 2 elements of that. The first part of the impression game is if you don't make enough impressions on somebody. So, and some people will take this as a multi-touch approach, but not having enough touches. So I would give up after 1 email, a bump, 2 phone calls, and a LinkedIn message. If somebody didn't get back to me, it was my problem. I wasn't bringing them far enough along down a cadence, and I was overestimating the quality of my touches. Of course, people are going to respond to me. I spent 20 minutes on an email. Nope. No good. So you need to remember that I think the number is 18 for C-suite. You need to have a certain number of touches built up before you'll get a response. Now, some of you will know that because your organizations have taken on that approach. It can go too far down the other way as well. You could be on step 7 of an 18-step cadence, and you could toss out an email and just be like, I'm only on step 7 anyway. That's a problem too. A good part of playing the impression game is making a good impression on each impression. So that's something that you need to think about. So if you want to miss your targets, don't play the impression game. Secondly, if you want to miss your targets, make your messaging about you. This is something that you'll hear a lot, but if the first line of your emails, of your outreach is, hi, name, I am, we do, I help, we support, there's a problem. Even we solve your problems, or you have problems that we solve, those are still about you. Your initial messages have to be about them. So it's not necessarily we solve your problems. I know that you have a problem. I sell to IT leaders. Google is well known for data. I'll talk to data analysts and go, hey, I know you don't have all of your data in one place. That's still about me, unless I'm like, hey, other data analysts are having a lot of trouble when they don't have their data in one place. Would you be curious to learn more about how we solve that? Ask permission to talk about yourself, and ask for curiosity at the beginning. There's a whole Gong post about that. But asking for permission to talk about yourself will allow you to reframe your messaging in a way that is more receptive to them. If you write, "Hi, I am," you've already lost. So remember to do that when you're writing up your messages. And the third thing that you can do, and don't tell your bosses I said this, is what you can do to miss your targets is work too hard. I used to do that. I still do it sometimes. But there's a reason for that. Working too hard. So starting at 7, ending at 7. There's a time and place for it. We're SDRs. Ours is not the time and place. And there's a reason for that. A lot of us come from college. A lot of us come from work hard, work hard, work hard, deadline. A lot of us come from that of ramp up to a deadline and then dip again. In the SDR job, there is no such thing. So we could get into that habit of, oh, but if I just target these 10 accounts, then I'll stop then. I'll rest then. But after those 10 accounts, you get another 10 accounts and you have to keep going. So set yourself these strict limits. Close down your laptop at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or whatever time you work for your market. Close it down and do something else. You're allowed to reopen your laptop again, but not for work. Go do something else. Mine is a cycle or a bit of exercise. Go refresh your brain, or else you'll sit on your bed and then you'll come back and you'll work for a couple of hours. Working too hard, and because there is no finish line like college. And that actually comes from a personal thing. Some of us gauge our personal success on our professional targets, which is the wrong thing to do. It's ridiculous. And if you're feeling personally attacked right now, that's for you. Actually, I'm not just going to leave you with that. If you have any issues with that, Google the Wheel of Life exercise. It puts work in context. But anyway, so I'm coming up to about 5 minutes now. Those are the 3 things that you should do to miss your targets, not play the impression game, make the messaging about you and overwork, or not hit your targets. But there's one other thing, and Jasmine and Jack kind of touched on this. You guys are all attending this webinar. You're all here sitting in this webinar, listening to people who are giving you their best practices. And I used to do that every single day for the first couple of weeks. And I would think, well, I'm listening to all these people who know what they're doing. Why am I not succeeding? Listening is not enough. If you could be watching and listening to all of these things instead of doing something. So pick something that you heard today, pick it and just do it. Because if you go into work tomorrow morning, having listened to 6 talks and nothing has changed, then this was a waste of an hour and a half. And if you think that you've come to the end of this talk and I'm the last one and there's about a minute left and you're like, I haven't picked anything out, here's something for you. Go through each of the speakers and connect with us on LinkedIn. But don't just send a blank connection request. Send, "Hi, Bryan, I liked your sales confidence talk," or "I hated it," each to their own. And do that. And here's what you'll get out of that. We'll accept, we just will. Some might respond, some might not be able to with the amount of work that they have. But what'll happen is, in a year's time, you could be applying for a BDR job in Google Cloud, and you could go, "Oh, I'm connected with Bryan." You reach out to me and you go, "Hi, Bryan, can you give me some insights on Google Cloud?" And I'll go, "Yeah, sure." But I'll scroll up and I'll see that we've had a brief conversation where you came to this. And now you're not somebody to help, or you're not somebody who just reached out for help. You're somebody who I've interacted with already. Taking something small from these events and going that extra 1%, just add that extra 1% over the line, accumulating that's what'll bring you to more success in hitting targets quicker. So on that note, do connect, do say hi. But I have hit my 7 minutes, so I'll let everybody jump back in. And hope you guys have a good day.
Bryan, can you see me?
I can indeed.
Good. We've got triple technical issues today. Apologies, everybody, but thank you to the speakers that have maintained some super composure and absolutely nailed this. So I'm going to invite on now all the speakers for a panel discussion. If the panel doesn't play to our favor because of the tech, I recommend you go to the networking area, which is on the right. But if all the speakers can gather, I've got a few questions, and then you can start asking questions in the audience. Okay. Speakers, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
Loud and clear.
Oh, wow. It looks like we've got all the speakers. Hopin have upgraded their tech. So the first conversation I want to bring this to is around learning. That's what a lot of everybody comes to. And Jasmine, gave us 2 dosages today, if you weren't aware. We got a double doses of learning, and you're all teaching us some hugely valuable advice. The first question is really, what is your approach to learning to become an exceptionally successful SDR?
Is that one straight to me? Yeah, so my approach to learning to become a good, outstanding SDR, I think it would just be going at your own pace and figuring out what works for you. And that's what I really tried to emphasize in my talk, is that everybody is going to be completely different. Everybody's going to be doing completely different things, whether it's reading, watching something, listening to something. And there's so many variations of learning that we can go to now. And what works for Bryan might not work for me, and what works for Jack might not work for Kevin. We're all completely different. So I think recognizing that and recognizing how we learn, what's the best way to absorb information for ourselves, and not getting too caught up about what other people are doing. Like, oh my gosh, Jack's read a whole book in like 2 days and I've done absolutely nothing. Like, no, we need to just sit back, relax, and just figure out what works for us. I think that would definitely be the best approach.
Who else has got a comment?
A thing I would say to lead on from Jasmine's is, and you're completely right, everyone's got their own way of doing things. And I think when you do find your own way, you've got to it's about making micro changes rather than trying to change all of your process at once. You can only make small changes to your prospecting daily, and trying to implement one thing and do it consistently across a 50 or 100 touch points to work out if it actually works is far better than you taking on 20 new things and trying them across 5 prospects. You're not going to see the results or understand if it does actually work for you. So one thing at a time, and experiment a lot with what you do implement and what you do learn would be mine.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I also do want to, we're all probably prospecting to completely different ICPs. And when I attended a lot of the training at the start, everybody was, prospecting to retail, and my prospects were financial services. And I replicated some of these tips that people gave me, and they just did not work. So I was learning from them, and I was failing as well. And I was like, I just don't know what's going on here. And I think that's why it's so important to recognize that what you're doing might be different to someone else. So what works for them won't work for you.
I love that. And I love this, one of the directions that we want to take sales confidence is having more vertical and ICP specific events. And that is, today's been inspirational because we've had Monika talking about different nationalities, cultures, language. We've had Gabby talking about Sam talking about different ICPs and, the different vertical targets. So on that note, can you just talk to your vertical, whoever you target, if that's a sales leader or if that's an IT leader or a CIO or a marketing manager, can you just speak about your target and what you find works best in that area, starting with, we'll go Bryan first and then we go back through the speakers.
Yeah, I sell to IT leaders in the UK. They like information. They like direct. They don't like huge amount of words. It's like, hey, it's not hey, we do this. It's more of a, hey, these are the challenges I know you're having. Let's have a conversation. Not let's have a conversation. Can I have permission to talk to you about this? To our IT leaders, a lot of them feel like they know the space. They feel like they know the differences between the different clouds. And what I'll say is something that will surprise them, that will get them curious, and then I have permission to pitch.
Jasmine?
Yeah, so I would say I was obviously prospecting to the financial services industry, and they are very pragmatic people. So I tried video prospecting, I tried voice notes on LinkedIn, and it was just horrific. Like, I just didn't get any replies. No one was replying to me. I was getting aired left, right, and center, and it was just not great. So I think for me, the financial services industry and the people that I was targeting, which sales directors, they are very tough people to crack, and they're always very busy. So I think for me, it's just cold calling. That's definitely the best method, traditional way.
I think the specifics of our product we offer in Varicent is characteristic of it is that sometimes people are not aware that they are in pain, and they realize that they are in pain when they see the description of our product. So I would say that the most difficult barrier is to get their attention and then let them understand. So I normally work with telco sector, pharma sector, and financial, and about tools and ways of prospecting. As I said during my talk, it's very different depending on the country and also individual person. Because, for example, when I see that someone has very long description on her LinkedIn bio, right, and he's sharing plenty of information, so for me it's already a sign that this person will be slightly more open for more casual conversation, not just purely professional about the product. So it's all about observation, I would say.
Shall I go? I'll go.
Jump in, Jack.
Cool. So in my experience, and currently I can sell to anyone with a revenue facing role, be that sales, marketing, customer success, account management, across any industry, anyone that manages some form of revenue facing role. Now I found like the two most crucial things that have like really worked to break through the noise are doing things like video prospecting and LinkedIn voice notes. But doing those things doesn't matter when you can't hypothesize about the pain that you're trying to overcome. And sometimes it's not about just sending the like great potential LinkedIn connection with the video and then the connection request. It's like the system or the sequence of events that you're going to take the prospect down till they eventually convert through that. So normally you don't connect with people like on the second step in your sequence or cadence, right? Like 90% of B2B meetings are set after touch point 6. That's a cool stat for you. And most outbound cadences are set in 14 to 16. So it's like keeping that consistency of up to 14 touches when you are reaching out to these leaders and doing it like effectively across all of these channels that you can do. So that would be my tip. Gabby, over to you.
There we go. Hey, I'm gonna plug SalesLoft for that one on your note, Jack, because doing a lot of touch points in a short space of time is much easier when you use that platform. So it's helped us out a lot. For our prospects, it's as Jack said, it's being very clear with the challenges you help them solve. Interestingly, I've for e-commerce professionals, what's really helped me to understand what they're working on is having a formula, and that formula is what they base their revenue on. For them, it's revenue equals the traffic to their website times the conversion rate and the average order value of their customers. And I just try and group them into customers who are working on one of those three things in the equation. That helps me understand what challenge they're likely to have and what I can prospect into. They also just love hearing about new videos or ways to optimize the process they're currently doing. So I always try and introduce a new thing they're not thinking about. That's going to help them get better results on top of what they're already doing. And that seems to be make them a lot more receptive to talking, is when I can appear a lot more consultative and offer them ideas and become an expert in the field.
Nice one.
Go to Kevin.
Kevin, can you answer this final part of the question?
Yeah. So yeah, like I sell to B2C e-commerce brands. So speaking to founders and CMOs, and for me, what works, just like Jasmine, it's more about dials and storytelling. So we tell a story where we relate to the brand, and then we tell them and we show them how they can get better and achieve better results through a story, and then they can picture that story and they can always relate to it. Because we actually started from a brand ourselves called One Piece. So that allows us to relate to them and then show them the pain that they're going through, that we went through, and how we solved it. So yeah, for me, it's getting on the phones, relate to them quickly, and show them that journey that you've been through and how you've solved that problem. Painting the picture, exactly, Alex.
Everybody, this is amazing. I'm gonna send us all over to network for the tech. Thank you, today's speakers. So round of applause to all of our speakers. You've done amazing. Well done. Thank you to the audience for being here. No thank you to Hopin. I'm not sure if you deserve that investment if you're listening to this. But thank you to the Sales Confidence team for pulling everything together. And a big thank you to our sponsors, SalesLoft, Varicent, Venatrix, Aircall, MindTickle, Demo Desk, Refract, Sales Psyche, Sales Works, and Air Marketing. Wouldn't be able to do these without you. If you're looking for a best of breed stack, that is it. Go get it. And I really look in person, so we don't have to worry about this type of tech, and we can have a beer. Whatever you're doing this evening, enjoy yourselves. And please do go and connect with a couple of people for the next 15-20 minutes or so, and we will see you very soon. Thank you all.